Let's get after it. There you go.
Welcome to the Gold Medal Excellence Podcast. I'm your host, Alexander Payne, along with my co-host, Chris Asher. And today in the program, we're joined by accomplished sprinter Bryan Howard. Bryan, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bryan. Thanks for being on here, sir.
Absolutely.
Good to see you. Good to see you, brother.
It's been a minute.
All right, so I'm going to start from the very beginning. Grew up in Moreno Valley, California. Talk to me more about your childhood.
My childhood, I initially lived in Bakersfield, California.
Big town.
Big town. So until I was 15. And then I went to live with my dad in Moreno Valley. I chose to make that decision. I thought it would be a better move considering my dad was heavily involved with track and field. And when I lived in Bakersfield, I never really trained. And, I knew my competitors were training with the high school team and they had extra training outside of that. I didn't have any of that. So I would just ran off raw talent when I was in my youth. So it's between Bakersfield and Moreno Valley, California. That's where I grew up.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because you said that your dad coached you, but you were in Bakersfield, and I remember your freshman year you were. We got questions for this earlier, but you were you were West Bakersfield High School all day,
Correct.
And I didn't know that's how you got started. I thought because I remember me and you always spoke and we said, "Oh man, my dad was a tough coach" or whatever. So that's how it got started. You were in West Bakersfield High School, and
Correct.
And the kids, and so I guess Marcus Hollywood and all those other guys, they were getting coached, and you were like, "All right, I'm gonna move my dad."
Yeah, I mean, I knew that they had a lot of those athletes that I was competing against had an edge because, I would just work out with the track coach there and pretty much done for the day. And I knew, others, I would see others training additionally outside of that, which, I was a kid. I didn't care to do that. Yeah. But I know now I'm like, oh, that actually gave them a benefit because high school coaching is, a lot of high school coaching is run a few laps and go home. Teachers, yeah, volunteer teachers. And then you got other people, their parents research it and provide them with top-notch training. You're gonna be at a disadvantage. So I kind of realized that, and I was like, wait a minute. I mean, I'm kind of good at track because I didn't even train.
Yeah. And
I was able to, win the seeded heat at Arcadia as a freshman. I won Mount Sac. I won the Junior Olympics. I ran quite fast as a freshman. So I'm like, okay, if I'm just doing this off of no training, just imagine what I could do if I was trained properly and correctly. So I made a decision to, leave Bakersfield, and it was a personal decision as a child to go live with my father. And then things changed from there because I had proper training. So it was just kind of like enhancing what I had naturally. So, it's important for all kids to really, if they're involved in a sport, my advice is for them to think outside the box on how could they better themselves. And that was my option. If I didn't have that option, I was realizing, okay, I'm going to have to do a little more training than what I do right now.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how it went.
You won state your sophomore year. You ran a 10.43. After that, did colleges start recruiting you, or when did colleges start recruiting, and when did you start thinking about making a decision on your commitment?
So I started realizing, they started showing interest when I was in the 9th grade, because the times that I ran in the 9th grade were, at the caliber to get a full ride scholarship at any Division I university. So that's when I said, oh, okay, this is the direction I'm gonna take because it's gonna pay for my education. I also played football. And then, once I got into high school, I decided to not play football going into my senior year because my dad made me do a research paper of the life expectancy of an NFL player. So during training and competing my junior summer in high school, I had to do this research paper. He dropped me off at the library and he made me put in time to do this research paper, and he reviewed it, and we sit down and talked about it, and I made a decision myself to not play football. So it was very interesting, the report. So it opened up my eyes about reality and, the suffering that a lot of these NFL players go through. I was aware of that at a young age. I just chose to not go that route because I was like, you know what, let me just utilize my skill set in running to get my education and utilize my education to make a living long term instead of having ailments and injuries that are life lasting.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because especially back then, if you were fast as a freshman, it was just like you're gonna get a football scholarship.
Oh, it's done deal. I mean,
like, especially as fast as you were.
Right.
I don't know if people know this. So my first recollection of Bryan Howard is he was running at West Bakersfield High School. He was a freshman. We've had Michael Granville on here, other people, but Bryan won the Arcadia Invitational as a freshman. They had two races, but they had like what's called a rated race and a seeded race. And I remember you guys had like Marcus Hollywell, but you guys both ran like 1080 as a freshman. It was like, who are these freshmen running 1080? And then I think you guys may have won the 4x1, and it was like, but where are these freshmen coming from? Because back then freshmen didn't run 1080.
Oh yeah. And we actually, even that summer, I ended up running, I think 1066 and 100 meters that summer. During club track. So Marcus and I, we dominated. There was not a freshman in the country that could hang with us. And it was nice that I had him to compete against every week. So we kept each other honest, and so it was great. It was great. And Marcus and I, a lot of people don't realize we lived down the street from each other.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. To talk to me about that dynamic, because people don't know that unless you know you Marcus Hollywell was real. I think. I mean, we always talk. We had the Jerry curl. How was that dynamic? And then how did you move to? I know you wanted to move to Moreno Valley with your dad,
right?
And that helped. But talk about how leaving West Bakersfield was, because as a freshman at West Bakersfield, you guys were like the top 4x1 in the state. As you guys were both freshmen,
right?
And then you guys. So how did that go? Like, because most people wouldn't leave a situation like that.
It was a very tough decision to make. And, it was very difficult. My mother worked long hours, so she wasn't really around much. So it's kind of like Marcus, his parents kind of stepped in as my secondary parents. Okay. I literally would stay the night at their house, and they'd feed me, take me to school. And Marcus was like my brother. I mean, we went to the same elementary school, and we played on the same flag football team. And then we played on the same Pop Warner team, the Packers. We went undefeated. And we both were in the backfield, and then I was a linebacker. And so Marcus, I've known Marcus since I was probably 6, 7 years old. We go way back. Yeah. So it was kind of fun because it was like competing with your brother. And then so it was very difficult to leave because I knew what we would do together would be great, and we'd push each other to a whole new level. But, I knew that, a fresh pace, a fresh, scenery would benefit me also, because Bakersfield is Bakersfield. So it was time to get out. I had an opportunity to get out at a younger age. My dad was also, ran track at Pepperdine. He got his master's degree from Pepperdine. So I knew that he knew what he was doing. He coached at Compton High School, Compton Junior College. He coached at Centennial, Bourbon Day, and then he went out to Moreno Valley. So I'm like, okay. I probably need to make this move so that I could get a lot of one-on-one coaching, and it'd take me to the next level. So it was a tough decision.
1993, you set the national high school record of 5.69 in the 50 meters, which was at the Sunkist Invitational, a record that still stands to this day. Talk more about that race and what it was like setting a national high school record.
Right.
We had Michael Granville on as well, and he also set some national high school records as well. And yeah, definitely is really cool and prestigious to set a national high school record.
Right. I was shocked when I broke it, and how much I broke it by. I mean, I just destroyed the national record, and I knew I was capable.
I was there. It was amazing.
Yeah. So I was impressed by that. So I always had an advantage. My start was always my strong suit. every USA team I've made, I ran first leg on the relay. When my university set the NCAA record, Division I at Texas Christian, I ran first leg on the relay. So I had an advantage because I have very fast reaction time. I'm more of a power sprinter. So I would get out and you would just have to chase me down. So it was exciting to break it. And then my senior year, I got to run with the professionals as a high schooler. So going into that was kind of interesting too. So I did well in that race too. So it was an eye opener. That's when it all started. And I'm like, okay. And that national record, I put it so far out of range, is still one of the top times ever in world history for any age. So I don't see that going anytime soon, that record.
Yeah. And the reason why I remember your record, I don't remember what year you were, but the reason why I remember it was because that day at the time it was called the Sunkiss Invitational or the LA Invitational.
Yes.
They had lost their sponsor, but like Travis Hanna ran and a bunch of college guys and pro guys ran.
Right.
They ran the 50 that day.
Yeah.
Same thing as you. And your time was better than them. And I remember being like, dude, this high school dude's time is way ahead of like these college and pro guys.
Right, exactly. And those guys were NFL guys down the road. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they had already been college All-Americans. I remember Travis Hanna ran, or I don't know, maybe Curtis Conway, but it was like,
oh yeah,
the USC guys had run, and it was like, man, where is this guy coming from? Like, this dude is killing these cats.
Yeah.
And he's only in high school.
Oh, yeah.
What year was that? Was that your senior year, Bryan, when you broke that record, or was
that was 1994, my junior year, and then my senior year is when I ran in the professional heats against the pros.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting. Oh yeah. Yep.
That day, it was announced that you broke the record formerly held by Bill Green in 1979. However, Paul Turner of University City High in San Diego was later ruled to be the winner and record holder, which lasted exactly 1 year. Tell more about that dilemma.
Well, yeah, I guess it was my sophomore year when that happened. It was a photo finish, and initially they said I had the record, and then they gave it to Paul, and I was okay with that because I was like, you know what, it is, whoever the real true winner is, let it happen. And Paul was a good friend of mine, so I was happy for him. But I knew I had to come back next year and take the record back. And Paul ended up going to Colorado State. He played in the NFL. He was an amazing athlete. So I was, just honored to even, be competitive with him. So it was disheartening, but I was young and I knew that I was going to do better the year after. So it was a lot of controversy over that.
And I remember the name Paul Turner, right? He was state champion in 100 meter, University City, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. He was real good.
He was the first of that crew. That was an amazing crew. They had like Felix Sanchez, Vince Williams, all that. But I think he was like the first guy I had ever heard of out of University City in San Diego.
Oh yeah, he put him on the map. I mean, he was the originator of them. He was the Michael Jordan of San Diego in track and field. And then so he was even when I won state, it was not easy to beat him. So when I seen him coming, I'm like, here it goes. It'll be a tough day.
Tough day at the office.
Oh yeah. And what's nice about these guys, we still talk to this day. So Marcus and Paul and we all still interact. Even Granville, we ran on the same track club with the West Valley Eagles. So that was kind of cool. Tyree Washington, Pat Johnson, we had a nice crew.
Oh yeah, and we're talking about that more. But yeah, we talked about that. Like West Valley Eagles was giving away plane tickets. That's what Granville said. It was like they just wanted an all-star team. It was like, okay, check this out. We want to show up at the Junior Olympics. We're gonna have Granville. We're gonna have Bryan Howard. We're gonna have Paul Turner.
Oh man, we had a crew, unbeatable.
You won the 1993 CIF California State meet in the 100 meters. Then in 1994, you were unable to repeat due to a false start. So how about that devastation?
That was tough because I had ran like in the rounds, I had ran 10:31 and slowing up. So I knew it was going to be a very fast time in the finals. And what happened was I heard the cameras go off. And then I was so focused and so honed in, any loud pitched noise, I was pedal to the metal getting onto the blocks. And I was in such a zone, I ended up false starting. So it was unfortunate, but it happened. So I didn't get to defend my title. So that was a sad case, but things happen.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So just going back, so your freshman year you didn't win. So you said I think you won as a sophomore.
Correct.
Okay, so you won sophomore, and then and so back in the day, if people remember, and people have been watching this podcast, everything back then was at Cerritos College. The CIF finals, the prelims might have been at another school like Riverside, but the finals were at Cerritos College, and the master meet was at Cerritos College.
Oh, yeah, they'd pack the stadium now.
Oh yeah, so like the Friday night of the state meet would be just crazy. Like, and then so I was there when you ran the 10:31 slowing down. I remember being like, oh man, he's gonna kill everybody. And I think Alexander's gonna ask that next, but that I guess that was what you would say if you didn't know Cal High sports and all the rivalries going on. That was where you got started with Pat Johnson and that rivalry because you had, I think everyone expected you to win the 100. But Pat Johnson was a new dude on the scene, so
he was. And I remember going to, I think it was a Riverside Invitational, and
I remember that.
Oh yeah,
he was on the cover of Cal High Sports. I remember it came like, where did Pat Johnson come from?
Came out of nowhere.
No one knew this dude.
Yeah, and I knew him.
And he got his name off beating Bryan Howard. I remember. Oh my God, he beat Bryan Howard at the Riverside County Championship.
Oh yeah. And I knew who Pat was prior to that because I remember competing against him the year before. But he came back. He was a different animal. But at that meet, he caught me off guard because I didn't expect any competition. So that meet, oh yeah, he caught me slipping, and we used that meet for training. So, and I had trained the day before over distance, and then during the meet. We're trying to work on my top end speed. So the goal was, all right, get out the blocks, let them get in front of you, and then run them down to work on, running to get that exposure of running from behind, just so it wasn't foreign to me if it ever happened. Well, that happened in the race, and I wasn't catching Pat. And I was like, oh man, this is interesting. So my dad basically said, don't worry about it. It's just for training, but just so you know, you got competition, and he's the real deal.
Oh, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can ask the next question about it, but it was crazy because Pat came from nowhere. He was like, I think the year before he got fourth or fifth at the state meet at 200, and you would see that and be like, oh, this dude's good. But no one expected that because you guys. I remember when you guys did that. You guys ran like 20 point at like the Riverside Championships, and back then no one ran 20 points unless it was state meet or Junior Olympics or anything.
Exactly.
And it was like, wait a minute, where did this dude come from?
Yeah.
Like Bryan Howard, everybody knows Bryan Howard. Where did Pat Johnson come from? This dude was just a dude from Redlands. Like,
oh yeah, he was the real deal, and he ended up going to Oregon, Pac-10 champion. And then he got a few Super Bowl rings, played in the NFL for the Ravens. So he, if he was beating me, I knew he was going to be something great. And I mean, all the guys that beat me ended up being great. Even the guy that broke all my records here locally, Michael Norman. And I had to deal with Alvin Harrison. I had to deal with Pat Johnson. So I'm happy to see that if they beat me, whoever beat me, they became great and did something great.
Talk about competing against Riley Washington. He was from Chula Vista Southwest, set the state record in 1992 with 10:30 in the 100 meters. Talk more about what he was like.
So Riley, he would win his races with his start. All right, and I watched his races when I was younger because he was older than me. To see him shoot out the way he would do it, put people down early. I mean, he pretty much owned them and just destroy their confidence. So I knew that there was something that I had to do is focus on my start and learn to run in front of people. But he was an amazing athlete too. So I believe Riley Washington, I think he was an NFL player himself. So so he was a great athlete.
I graduated in 92, shows me I'm getting old. And but I remember Riley Washington, he was that dude you didn't see too much on the scene. He went to Kearney High School in San Diego, No, Southwest. That's near
Yeah.
Chula Vista. That's by the border.
Yeah.
But most of these dudes you see all the time. But to me, just being a fan, it seemed like Riley Washington, that dude that would just. There were certain dudes that when state meet kept up, you didn't see him during the year. You didn't see him in Arcadia, and maybe Riley Washington was there, but it seemed like he just kind of crept up. But I remember even being in the stands at the state meet, and we were talking about betting earlier with Michael Granville, and I remember being like, "I'm betting on Riley Washington," and he ran like 10:30.
Oh yeah, he was
And
really
then
good.
he actually, I don't know if he went to the pros, but he went to Nebraska, and he was just that's back then Nebraska football. They ran the wishbone. They had like Tommy Frazier. That's when Nebraska was winning all national titles, and I remember the coach saying like, "Man, we brought Riley in because he's the fastest dude in the country. He can't catch a ball for a lick, man. He can't catch that ball, but man, he's the fastest dude in the roster."
Oh yeah, he was no joke, no joke.
Yeah.
So a lot of these youth these days, I don't think they understand that the majority of the NFL players that have been great, they're all ran track. Bo Jackson, all those guys. Bo Jackson was on the top 10s list at Auburn University because he was on the list with me, and Alexander Wright was on the list too. So it's kind of like, oh, they're onto something here. So I think more football players should run track because it's every sport's about speed.
Who was the coach at Auburn before you got there with Harvey? It was Mel Rosen, right?
Mel Rosen.
I remember sitting at the coaches convention. We were in Orlando or Phoenix or San Antonio, one of those places. But I actually just got sat by Mel Rosen.
Oh yeah.
He was older, but he looked at me and he said, "Hey, coach, where you at?" And all this, we were chit-chatting. He goes, "You know who the best athlete I ever coached was Bo Jackson." And he said, "Bo played football, baseball, he loved track. He loved track." He goes, "And I could only get him once in a while." And he goes, "I would have to open the gym up for him just to do starts and, this and that and that." And, so, man, yeah, those guys back then were great.
And Mel Rosen, he was around when I was there. So I was being coached by Harvey Glantz, and Mel Rosen was sitting there, right next to him. So it was kind of like, it was a great experience to have those two coaches and also learning all their knowledge.
1993, you were the runner-up in the 200 meters behind Calvin Harrison. You mentioned him briefly on the podcast, but go more in depth on what Calvin Harrison was like.
Calvin was not normal.
He was a monster. He showed up off the scene and no one knew who him and Alvin were.
They put on shows, especially in that 4x4 relay. It was amazing to see how they'd walk people down. And I remember when he got the baton about 40 meters behind, and he pointed the baton.
Yep.
And then he just ran the guy down and probably ruined the guy's life is what he did. That didn't happen. But he was not easy to run against. And I was a sophomore. I was a young guy. He was this senior. And I took second against him in the state, but he was unreal. And later, Calvin and Alvin Harrison, they would become great in the sport of track and field and get tons of gold medals. So very impressive, very difficult to run against. I just accepted second place when that happened because I knew that, it was going to be tough.
Yeah, go back to that because Calvin and Alvin really came out of nowhere. Their story was they were from Florida and then they moved to Salinas.
Yes.
Like no one knew them. Like
No.
like we talk about Patrick Johnson. At least you said the year before he made the state meet, you kind of knew he was there.
Right.
I don't remember Calvin and Alvin being anywhere, and then all of a sudden, back then, if you ran 47, you won the state meet in the 400. If you ran 40, if you were at 47, you were state champion, or 46. Yep. And the next thing who is this dude that runs 45? And then it's his twin brother, and then it was like, whoa, where does cat come from?
It was unreal. It was like you would see the leadoff leg get the baton to Alvin, and they're in last place by 50 meters. And then Alvin will run the whole field down, and they're in first place by 20 meters.
Yep.
Then they hand it to a third leg guy, and everybody'd run this guy down. It looked like a guy they just pulled off the street corner, right?
Yep. I was there.
Yeah.
It was like they ran 45 in the first and the second leg ran like 54.
Yes, yeah, literally. I mean, they could have put 2 women on that relay and still won. That's
And
how fast their splits were. They were splitting 44 relay legs in high school, 45s in the open. That's competitive to this day at an elite level. And they were in high school.
yeah, and they just came
Oh.
up. And so how was that for you sophomore? You didn't know anything about them. You're like, I don't know these cats. And they
I
showed
didn't
up.
even know where Salinas was. I didn't know anything about him. And I ran with him on the turn, and then he just hit another jet. And, he's pretty tall in his frequency. So I just figured, I'm just going to stay where I'm at. And, the rest of the field was way behind us, but it was just, it was Calvin and myself, but he ran by himself.
Yeah.
That guy's a real deal. So it was great to even be able to run against somebody like that and to see what he did afterwards was greatness.
1994, after your false start in the 100 meters, you had 1 hour to redeem yourself in the 200 meters. I actually got a video of that on YouTube. It's out there, and I just wanted to play that for you real quick. Just take a trip down memory lane on what it was like for you running that 200 at the CIF California State meet. You're in 1994. All right, I'll play it real quick.
Oh man, the blue track.
Blue track is Cerritos. And you got out. Look at you. You jumped on that cat.
Yeah. You know what I did there? Because I false started in 100 meters, I was upset and I didn't run a smart race because at the Masters meet, I beat Pat in the 1 and the 200 meters. And going into the finals of 100 meters, I was way ahead of the whole field time-wise. And I think when I got into that 200 meters, I figured, okay, I didn't run 100. I got fresher legs. I'm just going to go out a little harder than I should. And I think what happened is by me not running my regular race, I didn't have as much in the tank coming home. So that's early on in my career when I learned, okay, stick to your race strategy. Don't ever deviate. Don't ever change your strategy. And that's what I did. I didn't run my race. So he basically took advantage of that. And, I'm glad it was Pat that won because we became good friends. So I was happy for Pat. He was consoling me there. I think there's a picture of us online when I false started. As soon as he won the 100, when I false started, he came right over to me and, hugged me and was like, hey, it'll be all right. Let's get ready for this 200 meters. So he had a lot of character. So I was able to accept that loss. But hey, second in the state, you can't, I guess it's not that bad.
Yeah, especially California. And I remember that race. And I think what you said is that's what I thought. I said, man, this dude just false starting 100 meters. He's going to just go out like a bat out of hell. Like he's going to show. That was my thing. I remember being like, he's going to show them. And you did that, and it was like, I'm going to get after these cats. They're going to beat me. They're going to have to chase me down.
Exactly. And it showed. I mean, I really, to make up Pat Stagger in the turn, you just don't make up a stagger of an athlete like that. I mean, I was way out, and then it was just, I went out a little too hard, and I broke form a little bit. My right wrist was flopping inwards, and that ties you up. So my form quite wasn't there in certain positions. And I look at when you showed the video, I'm like, I see exactly when and where I went wrong.
And people don't know that Pat Johnson was phenomenal. He was late. He was late on the scene, but he was phenomenal. He won the Pac-12 title as a freshman in the 400, and he played football at Oregon. I remember he wasn't even trained for Olympic team. So me and Pat are friends, and we talk, and it was just like wow, that.
Okay.
And you two, that was a great. I tell people that was an underrated rival. That was like you and Obi because it was only for like 1 year.
Yeah, it was 1 year, and even when he left, it stuck with me throughout my my life. Through high school, through college. I would always pay attention to where's Pat, what's Pat doing, even though. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, he ended up beating Carl Lewis at the Drake relays. I remember we would always have a conversation. He told me he was talking to this pro team, and they were like, "You ain't the fastest dude in the team." And he told, I think, the dude the Ravens, "Are you crazy? I beat Carl Lewis." So can you imagine NFL guys saying you ain't the fastest dude in the team? You're like, dude, I beat Carl Lewis in the 100 meters at the what? How many guys can say they beat Carl Lewis?
Right. I don't think there's not many of any NFL players that have ever ran what Pat ran. I don't,
Yep.
you know, it's the range he had from 100 to 400, and he would destroy you in that 4x4. It was fun to watch him do that. I mean, he'd walk people down. He was in a similar situation. He had 3 blind people and himself. The way it seemed, the way he would run people down, how far he was behind. He'd be behind 100 meters in
Yeah.
a 4x4 and walk everybody. And I would be in the stands to watch it because, you know, I ran the 400s only for training purposes, but he ran it competitively. So
Your records lasted over 20 years until the emergence of Michael Norman, who was also from the same Riverside County area as you. Talk more about how it felt having somebody from your same area outshine you and take all your records.
I was happy for him. And I knew I had this discussion with my wife. I'm like, if anybody breaks my Riverside County records, which were there for 25 plus years, it's going to have to be somebody that's going to be a real legend that's going to last forever. And he came on the scene, and I mean, he became the Michael Norman, which, you know, everybody knows who he is. He's unbeatable, and his range is impeccable on the track from 1 to 4. So I was happy for him to see that and to know that. I mean, he lives right down the street. His parents, I mean, he's in Marietta. I'm in Canyon Lake. It's not too far away.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy. It's good to see records go. It just, that 50-meter record, I don't ever see that being broke. I don't know how I did that. It's so far out of range, but I was happy for Michael Norman. I believe he didn't even end up breaking a world record indoors at 400 meters, something like that.
I remember seeing Michael Norman. I coached at UCLA just for 1 year, but I remember him showing up at the track, and Coach Frazier, the throws coach, was like, "Yo, this is that next dude."
Oh yeah, he is.
And he was like, "Yo, you don't believe how good this dude is." And then, you know, yeah, like in high school, he might have won the one. I don't know what he won at Arcadia. I wasn't there for that point, but like it was just like, yo, where this dude come from? You know?
Oh yeah, him. And I remember doing starts with Usain Bolt when I was a pro athlete. Usain Bolt was in high school.
I didn't even know that. You're doing starts with Bolt.
Yeah, and he was a 400-meter guy. And I remember when I was talking to his coach, they're like, "Yeah, he's the real deal. He's going to be the next great one." And I was like, he could sprint too. And I'm like, this guy can't sprint. This guy's like 6'5". You know? It just defies
this
physics.
Guy can't sprint. Let's write that down.
I'm like, he's a big old dude. So he actually can sprint, and he became Bolt, you know, the world record holder. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now, because his coach called it, and I got to do starts with him and some workouts with him when he was much younger than I was, and I could see the greatness in him. So I was impressed. So
yeah. The one early. It's funny you said the one early thing I remember about Bolt. I didn't know. I mean, I was a college coach. I was at Cal LA. We're at Mount Sac Relays, but I was standing by John Smith, and I think the agent, Tony Campbell.
Yeah.
When I'm air hustling, I'm talking to him, but I'm kind of air hustling because they're talking about all this. But I remember them being like, "What about the 16-year-old Jamaican that ran like 19.8?"
Yeah.
And they were talking about Bolt.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, and I remember being like, "Did they just say a 16 or 17-year-old ran a 19.8?" And people didn't realize was Bolt got hurt for 3 or 4 years, but Bolt was at 16 was like the fastest junior dude in the world.
Oh, he was
crazy fast. He was hurt, and then the year of the Beijing Olympics when he won everything, came on the scene, he had just got healthy. But for the people kind of were to know, it was kind of like, nah, this is a dude, because he had won, was it World Junior Championships, Bryan?
World Juniors.
He had like won World Juniors. 16-year-olds don't run 19s, at least back then.
Oh no. Because when I went to World Juniors, I was a sophomore in high school, and I made the World Junior team, and I ran the 200 meters of the World Juniors. And you had to run 4 rounds. But I look back at what he did to get to the finals and what he was running each round. I'm like, dang, this guy is no joke. So,
I coached the World Juniors. It was crazy because I was used to, NCAAs, D2, college, even USA's 3 rounds. I got the World Juniors, it was 4 rounds. And I remember like these dudes got to run like today in the prelims. I remember I had Tyreek Hill, I had Aaron Ernest from LSU, I had Aldridge Bay. They had a good crew. And I remember being like, dang, they got to run early in the morning. Then they had to come back that night and run around.
Yeah.
Then early in the morning and run a semi, and then come back that night and run a final.
Oh yeah, it was. I've never ran 4 rounds in my life except for the 200 meters at World Juniors. I just couldn't believe it.
And you have to run your fastest in the final. That's what people didn't get. Like for a young kid, you know how hard that is. Like at the state meet, you had a day between the prelims and the finals.
Yeah, exactly.
At World Juniors, you had 4 rounds in 2 days or 3 days.
Oh yeah, 4 rounds, and you're young, competing in a completely different time zone that you're not even used to. You're young, your body is trying to acclimate, so it was brutal.